You sure this wasn't the work of the Edina Young Conservatives Club? Where is he going? Good morning, Minneapolis. My name is Toussaint Morrison, and I'm your host for Good Morning Minneapolis, brought to you by On-Site Public Media. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope today's show can give you some useful info on how to interpret what's going on in the world. And just as an aside, our studio right now is being used, so it's not accessible. Secondly, it's super windy outside, so the next best place is my car. There you go. If you'd like to support the show and shows like this, click the link below to support On-Site Public Media or become a monthly member. Let's get to it. Today, in obvious news, the Minnesota Post Board, the licensing agency, is voting on new rules for the Minneapolis Police Department. And one of the rules may ban white supremacy in the police department. Hey, looks like we may be getting a new police department. You hear that? Many police departments, especially the Minneapolis Police Department, are like the 2017 Cleveland Browns, winless, bottom of the pack, and they're tanking on purpose to hopefully get some new draft picks. The issue with the Minneapolis Police Department is that their draft picks keep coming from Lakeville. Speaking of systemic failure, low standards, and staff dysfunction, the 376 police officers that descended upon the Uvalde Robb Elementary School to stop a school shooter on May 24th did virtually nothing. Reports and videos displayed law enforcement officers in a delayed response for over an hour outside of Robb Elementary, staving off parents from boldly entering the building. And now, an official 77-page report was made on the department for having absolutely failed the students by not engaging in any of their active shooter training. The Texas Tribune writes, "No one was able to stop the gunman from carrying out the deadliest school shooting in Texas history, in part because systemic failures and egregious poor decision-making by nearly everyone involved who was in a position of power. It was initially stated that officers could have stopped the gunman after 3 minutes, but waited over an hour as more law enforcement agencies arrived to the scene," Reuters writes. Other than the attacker, the committee did not find any villains in the course of its investigation, the report stated. Instead, we found systemic failures and egregious poor decision-making. No one villain other than the attacker? Just a systemic failure, you say. Is this like an indictment to the entirety of policing, like the foundation of it? No bad apples, just a rotten tree that started out as runaway slave catchers and are now inept at protecting the people they vowed to serve. Got it. Think about that. 376 officers show up to a school shooting, can't figure out leadership, and can't form a plan based on their training for these exact types of situations. Just think, officers spent more time restraining the parents that wanted to do something than attempting to restrain the actual attacker that was busy killing their children in Robb Elementary. Speaking of over 100 officers and systemic failure, the Minneapolis Police Department have killed another black man. Tekle Sundberg, a 20-year-old black man, was fatally shot by 2 snipers from the Minneapolis Police Department, Aaron Pearson and Zachary Serafine, as NPR reported. How did we get here? Let's break this down quickly. CBS writes, Wednesday night, Arabella Yarborough called 911 saying a bullet went through her wall. Moments later, a second bullet tore through her kitchen wall, and she grabbed her 2 young sons and hid in the bedroom where she called police. Not long after, she ran to let officers into the building and told them to save her children. Investigators report the bullets were fired by Tekle Sundberg. Building presumably evacuated. 116 officers plus 1, we'll get to that in a second, are staked out at the apartment building to arrest Tekle. At this point, it's important to point out that Tekle was adopted from Ethiopia. He was a black man, which regardless of the scenario, the sheer presence of the Minneapolis Police Department and him as a black suspect raised the probability for fatality because the MPD uses deadly force on black people more than they do white people. And you know how some people are like, that's your opinion. Show me the stats. Where's your information? Well, all you have to do is Google MPD racism report, and it's right there. You'll see all the information you need to know to educate yourself and whatever needs proof that cops are racist. You're welcome. 6 hours after MPD showed up, snipers Aaron Pearson and Zachary Serafine fatally shot Tekle and killed him. Police initially reported that they let Tekle's family speak to him for him to come out unarmed, and that's not true. We're in an interview with Tekle's family with Georgia Fort. They said the police did not let them speak to Tekle or get into the building to approach him. So, 116 officers plus that one. That one was Zachary Serafine, who took the shot and killed Tekle, but somehow wasn't in the initial reported lineup of officers attending. If over 100 officers with the quarter of a day on their hands can't bring out a black man suffering from a mental health crisis alive, regardless of what happened, then perhaps they should just start responding to scenarios involving black people like they would white people, and maybe the use of deadly force would decrease, because that's what the stats say. Also to note, of the 117 officers that showed up to the call about Tekle, 29 of those officers had no known complaints, and 5 were killer cops who had already actively participated in the killing of someone. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at a company and 75% of the employees have complaints and 5 of them have killed people, I file that under a 0-star review section in Yelp, which is what Mayor Jacob Fry would call work in progress. And we're taking all the steps legally to figure this out with the BCA, so we can have cops investigate cops and figure out yet again why the MPD killed another person of color. Thank you. I'm going to be leaving this press conference. No questions. And racism isn't just for cops. Edina made the headlines recently with this. Case TP writes, Edina Public Schools says it is investigating an array of slurs that were written at the school's athletics complex and discovered on Sunday. 5 Eyewitness News noted that anti-Asian, anti-black, and anti-LGBTQ+ statements were written in chalk across Edina school tennis courts outside Coolman Stadium. Racism in public in Edina. The Edina Police Department is investigating it. Will the Edina Police be investigating themselves? Hey, I'm just saying, why not start where it usually starts? It's a good place to start. I can see the press conference now with Edina Mayor Jimmy Hovland. Racial epithets? About people of colors? Whew, thank goodness it's in chalk. We can spray that right down. Wasn't like back in my day when Edina was a sundown town. My friends kids in that day used to use paint, and it was a whole lot harder to wash off. Anywho, once we get this racism and homophobia wrapped up, we'll be good to go. Oh, and last but certainly not least, we want people to know there's a meat raffle at the Yacht Club with a $200 buy-in. Thank you. That'll about do it for us here at Onsite Public Media. Good morning, Minneapolis. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is me, Toussaint Morrison, your host in my car. It's hot. It's windy out, I'm sweaty, and this is just how you have to do it sometimes. So thank you so much. If you'd like to support shows like this, click the link below, and we'll see you in the next one. Our work is never done.